Welcome to Narratives and Nightcaps, Books, Beverages, and Author Conversations. Today, I'm excited to welcome author and illustrator Jessica Walker to the show to talk about her upcoming debut novel, The Secret Astronomers, available November 4th. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. And I knew we were just talking about video too. Like, I wish I could show everybody this book. I did actually put it up on an Instagram story because I was like, I need people to see this 100%. It's absolutely incredible. And I can't wait to hear more about it, everything that inspired it, your process. I'm so intrigued. But before we do that, what nightcap pairing do you have for us today?
So I thought you might ask this question, so I did a little homework. I hope that's okay.
Of course.
So this is a story that is kind of a duality between two different places. One place is in Appalachia in rural West Virginia, and the other is San Francisco, California. So I was trying to think about how one might reflect those two places in a cocktail. And so I came up with a cocktail I'm going to call Two Places at Once. And it is some Kentucky bourbon, which is kind of represent this Appalachian kind of earthy taste. And then we're going to mix that with Brucato, which is a craft distillery based in San Francisco's Mission District. And they make amaros and liqueurs from like local California botanicals. So I was thinking maybe you could combine these together and create some kind of delicious cocktail that was like bi-coastal in its philosophy.
I love
Have I ever
that.
tried that? No, but wouldn't it? It sounds kind of delicious.
I love it. Well, I love that it's unique to this exact story, tying in both sides. Oh, that's perfect. Yep. Also, haven't had that, but now I feel like I have to figure out a way to do this. Very cool. Well, cheers to that. Let's do a little get to know you too. Would you say you're more of a coffee or a tea person?
That's so interesting. I'm definitely a coffee person, although right this minute I'm drinking tea so that I don't talk too quickly.
Um, that we're the same person in that in that regard because even I had coffee much earlier today. I had a really early start to my day, and I'm normally a multiple cup kind of person, but I was like not today because you have to be able to talk normally to Jessica.
Totally. So right now, what am I drinking? Some delicious, like, I don't even know what this is. Elderberry and echinacea tea. I mean, that's so delicious. My coffee situation this morning, I'm almost embarrassed to say, was a cup of microwaved coffee that I made yesterday, straight from the pot.
No, you do what you have to do. So
I have friends that would like disown me for saying that.
Oh no. Well, because of this podcast, I'm probably disowned by like all of the English when it comes to tea making because slowly I've exposed the fact that like I cannot brew a cup of tea at all. So I've been disowned by that entire country. Um, are you more of a cocktail or a mocktail person?
Oh, I'm gonna go cocktail. I do like to have the effects of that. But I realize this book is for young adults, so I should probably think about a mocktail to pair with this book. So I'll be thinking about that.
There can be I think I definitely lean more cocktail as well, but there's a good time for like a nice mocktail, especially when it is like the YA sort of books or even just I mean, well, I live in Florida, so it's really hot and sometimes you just need something really refreshing earlier in the day and a fun mocktail can be really nice. What was the last show or movie you watched?
What was the last show or movie I watched? I'm currently watching Severance,
Okay, and
which
thoughts so far?
so it's an interesting thing that I can't remember everything that happened. And I feel it from season one, and now we're in season two. And, it kind of doesn't matter because the story To me, it doesn't really matter where you enter into this series. You're gonna be intrigued because something happens every episode, and it's just weird in its narrative structure anyway. So I'm really enjoying that. My husband kind of had to talk me into it because you have to be in the right frame of mind to watch Severance. It's kind of a mind, it messes with your mind a little bit in a good way.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I'm watching. And, I have two young kids, so we watch things like Dog Man and Captain Underpants, and I love those shows. Like my mom friends who are like at the playground telling me how much they hate Dogman. I'm like the one mom that's just like, I think it's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen or read.
I can't say I'm familiar with Dogman, but I am impressed that Captain Underpants is still around. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's the
Happy to hear
same
that.
author, Dave Pilkey. He does Dogman and I mean, he's got a whole franchise, but I think he's genius.
Very cool. Way back there, when I was in high school, there was this dance. We called it toga, but no one actually wore togas. But you would basically dress up. In my group, we all went as Captain Underpants one year.
Brilliant. Love
It
it.
was great. It was a lot of fun. Okay, for you, maybe not for your kids, although you're welcome to do both. What was the last book you read?
Oh, this isn't this like the best question for an author? I'm kind of a new author. I'll put myself there, and I have to go to my Libby app. Do you know what the Libby app is?
Yes, 100%. And I'm very, even with this podcast, last night someone was like, "Hey, do you have any book recommendations?" And I was like, "Let me go to my app really quick."
Yes, because I just can't remember these things, right? And then here they are as a list. Thank you so much. What have I been reading lately? I mean, this will give you a sense of where my brain is. Let's see, I read Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens recently. I read The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. Loved those. See, I'm kind of a little bit behind. I just read Brave New World again by Aldous Huxley
Oh my goodness.
because I'm also a professor at a university, and I just felt like the conversations that were happening in that book were being echoed in my classroom. And so I was reading that just because of the times we're living in and really enjoyed that again. I read this incredible book called The Girls of Atomic City by Denise Kiernan, which is a book about the women that worked on the Manhattan Project in Tennessee, because this was a site where they mined uranium in secret in Appalachia in the middle of like rural Tennessee. And because so many men were away during World War II, the women were the ones that came together and like mined this uranium for an atomic bomb. It's a fascinating story. Anyway, that's called The Girls of Atomic City. I highly recommend that book. And then, yeah, I'm so behind on the classics. I mean, like, I just recently jumped into The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood because, like, I never read that book.
Also, what a time to read it.
I know. I think that's really what it is like, I never I wasn't an avid reader, in high school and college, and so, sadly, I'm very kinda sad about that, but now I feel like I have to go back and make up for that, and one of the other wonderful things that I've found is that Yale University publishes, like, all of their lectures online. So I'll go and like take a course on YouTube that's like the American novel since 1945. I just listened in. And even if you haven't read the books, it's kind of amazing to just learn about them from that perspective of a brilliant professor. So I'm all over the place. There's also some books in this list that I'm too embarrassed to say.
I mean, I like it because I would say me personally, but also this show is a little bit all over the place, but also pretty intentionally because I I think we all, and I have three other co-hosts for this show, we all just love exploring different genres, different authors, learning something new from all of them, whether it's a different style or learning about a new place in the world, anything. Like, I mean, I've grown up in the US, obviously, and I learned so much from your book too. So, well, if you weren't much of a reader, can you think about what some of your earliest influences were, whether it's films, real life experience that really inspired your career as an illustrator, now a writer, and as a professor?
Sure. I mean, I've always been super into the visual arts. Like, I was the type of teenager who was like president of the art club. I was that kid, you know? And so I've always leaned into that as a way to, express ideas and stories. And I got into illustrating children's books because I had kids, so it's, like, way later in life. I went to school to be an artist. I got my MFA in fine arts, and then I had children much later and saw all of these incredible children's books through their eyes in a new way, and was just so inspired by them and found them so beautiful. And when you have young children and you get this experience of reading stories to them, you just kind of take that in a new way. And so I just kind of jumped ship about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm like, I just want to illustrate books now. And so I've just kind of reinvented myself. You're never too late to learn something new. I'll say that. So.
That's really, really cool. I don't know, love that story. And I think that that's a great message for everybody. Kind of getting into this, and one thing I was driving this morning and I was thinking about it even more. Do you have a favorite constellation? Is that do people ask favorites about that? But I was like, I wonder if she has a favorite constellation.
That is a great question. I always look for the constellation Cassiopeia, which is like this W in the air. I don't know why. I think my mother pointed this out to me when I was a young kid or something. So I always look for that one. Um, I lived in Australia for a year around 2009 or so. And so when you go to a different hemisphere, it's kind of crazy when you look up at the stars for the first time. If you've never been to a different hemisphere in your life, like was the case for me, and to look up in the sky and to see a whole new, group of stars and constellations is so cool. And like, so the Southern Cross is something you can see from Australia that you can't see here. And so I would just say that that's a fun one for me because it reminds me of that time of my life.
That's really cool. What were you doing there for a year?
I got a Fulbright scholarship after graduate school to go and make a film in Australia for a year. It was the best year of my life. I shouldn't say that. I mean, having kids was cool, but it was so great to be like paid to be an artist and to travel in this country that I knew nothing about, and it was fabulous. Yeah.
That's amazing. What a cool experience. Oh, I love that. What's a favorite astronomy fact that
Oh,
you love to share with others? And I guess did you learn it too, like while writing?
there are so many great astronomy facts. Well, this one isn't really an astronomy fact. It's more of a cosmos fact, which is from probably Carl Sagan. Um, and he had this moment in one of his books or the PBS series he had on in the 80s and 90s. And he would just have you sit and you do this thing where you look to your left and you look to your right and you think, oh, I'm at the center of the universe because there's infinity on all sides of me. And that always like made me so inspired.
Yeah.
It's also pretty like egotistical that you're the center of the universe, but I just like thinking about that.
Yeah, I guess I would say it probably depends on your personality, but at the same time is very cool to think about, and you're the center, and then but also just like this one little piece of everything going on in this crazy world right now. Okay, let's get into it for listeners with your book coming out. Can you tell us a little bit about what The Secret Astronomers is all about?
Yes, I love that you said that you need to show people because I feel that way all the time. It's such a visual book.
It's
Yes. And you
it's
have, oh, you've got
oh,
the real one.
okay, well, so I literally have both. So I got this one originally, the art copy, and which I was so excited about, like, and I'm always so 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 grateful. I was not expecting to get the final version, and so I need to send an email to them to let them know that I got it. And I was so this showed up, and I was expecting another one, and I was like, and I opened this, I was like, oh my gosh, they sent me the actual one because it
I'm
is
so
just
glad that they did because it's just like a totally different experience.
completely,
I
completely. It's
didn't.
beautiful.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I it makes me really think differently about how authors get their work out in the world, right? Like this advanced reader's copy is great. It's great that it exists, but it just made me think, wow, that's the first impression that people see of a book sometimes, and maybe it's radically different than what the actual book is, you know? So interesting. So it's a very visual experience. It is a book that maybe from the outside looks like a typical book. Not really. It's kind of been marked over and drawn on by hand, it looks like. But when you open it, you realize that there are post-it notes and taped in collage and drawings on the pages. And um, I really want it to feel like you've stumbled on a book that has a secret world inside of it. And so it is written between its correspondence between two narrators. They remain anonymous throughout the entire book. They go by the code names Copernicus and Kepler, and they keep this library book in the library shelved as it should be, but they check it out each day and put their notes and thoughts into it and put it back for the other one to find later in the day or the next day. And it's a story that I think focuses on the diverse political spectrum of our country, which is very timely right now, I think, given our very polarized politics. You know, the media wants us to really to dictate which side we're on, you know, blue or red, urban, rural. And the characters in this story have a really wonderful way of connecting across those divides because they come from very different places. One, Kepler is from West Virginia and Copernicus is from California. And so,
Totally different worlds.
totally different worlds. I've lived in both of these places. I can speak from experience. They are radically different. And, um, you know, one of the girls lands in uh, West Virginia kind of unexpectedly due to an issue in her family, and she's going through a lot. And Kepler has to really help her figure out what this, you know, to her seems like a very strange, awkward place, West Virginia, just kind of to talk through some of the interesting cultural parts of what she's experiencing. So, one thing I will mention is that the story is set in Green Bank, West Virginia, which is this amazing place in the real world that I got the opportunity to go to and as part of the research for this book, which was incredible. And it's home to the Green Bank Observatory, and because of these giant radio telescopes that are in this tiny, tiny small town in the middle of rural Appalachia, the people who live there can't have a lot of modern technology because it interrupts the sensing that's happening with the telescopes. So, you know, microwaves, cell phones, even having like a digital camera near the giant radio telescope interferes with its sensing. So, teenagers in Green Bank have to be very creative with how they communicate because they don't always have social media and they don't always have, you know, cell phones. So, an epistolary novel where you have to have correspondence between writing actually is maybe one of the most successful ways to communicate in this town. So, yeah.
It is so unique and so it just really, really neat. I was talking to my husband about it because maybe this just shows my like ignorance, but I just didn't know a lot about that area. And so it was so fascinating to even know that this like exists and is real in this country. And what a cool experience to go and sort of see that. I would Does it feel at all like a little bit like stepping back in time when you're in the town?
Yes, there, I got there and usually you would just like, fire up your GPS and figure out where you're going and like none of that exists. So it does kind of feel a little bit like going back in time. I mean, I'm old enough to remember life before the internet, so um I can identify with like not having GPS, but it is a bit like that. And there are people that seek out Green Bank because they feel that life has become too complicated, and some people even believe that radio waves impact our brains and are making us unhealthy. And so all kinds of people will choose to move to that part of the world for different reasons.
It's so interesting. You're making me a recovered memory of when I moved down to Florida. We didn't have GPS on our phones, and I know I want to say I got like a Garmin in college, but when I moved down to Florida, my mom and I drove, and I remember us printing out the directions and taking all the maps and stuff to get down here. And now it's like nobody would ever just drive across the country without their phone or some sort of GPS, but we just had everything in on a map and some printed directions. And other than that, it was like hope and a prayer that we were going to make it.
That's right. Yes.
So very, very interesting. Well, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe I'm making assumptions too. What was the first spark that inspired this story? I hear that there was kind of one question in particular, but really what was the inspiration for it all?
That's great. Yes, it did kind of start with this one question, which is I've always been really fascinated by astronomy. I don't really have the brain for astrophysics. I'm more of an artist, but the questions that are revolving around life beyond our Earth just fascinate me. And so when I was in college, I went to the University of Virginia, which is kind of close by Green Bank. And I got to take a lot of astronomy classes, and we learned about the Green Bank Observatory and how it's really like this center for the search for extraterrestrial life in the universe. And so, right there, I'm just fascinated by that. And I've just been having this thought recently about, again, the polarity of our country and our politics. I mean, I grew up in rural Appalachia, and I have a lot of family that still lives there, and I have lived in cities for the last 25 years and chose to move away. And I still love the part of that culture that is alive and well. There's so many unique, beautiful things, parts of Appalachian culture that should be celebrated and are just unique. And yet, there are some things about that culture that we may need to rethink and we may need to, you know, bring new light to with different new generations of thought. And so I constantly oscillate between these places. I love where I'm from, but I also love that living in cities and traveling in my life has brought new opportunity to me. So that there's a lot of that kind of back and forth in the book, and I think that's where the story really sparked from.
And I get to, I know we're talking about more YA, but I feel like that is I know I feel that way too in like my own personal journey, and so it's really neat to see that, and even as an adult, like you can read it and still connect with just the emotion and the feelings of either being torn or going back and forth or being able to connect on two different sides of something in some way. So it's just, I don't know. I'm always fascinated when people are like, "Oh, it's a YA book. It's a YA book." I'm like, "Right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's only for young adults or that there isn't something for adults to also take away from the story." And there's just, I mean, so much with this one, the story, but even the creative behind it, which leads me to I need to know about your process to make this book because I'm like absolutely blown away by just how you would do that. Did you, I mean, how did you piece it together? I guess I'm like so many things are going on in my brain because I wish my brain worked like this, and so I'm so fascinated to hear about how you did it.
Well, huge kudos to bookmakers because they believed in something that was even hard for me to describe this kind of vision for it, and yet they were like, "Yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it." Um, so the process really was, well, one other thing that I was really interested in, because I work with young people, I'm a teacher, and I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be cool if textbooks were, like, actually written in the language that a teenager would wanna read them? And, like, what if textbooks actually talk to you? Or what if they were snarky and funny and made fun of the scientific facts? So I was kind of interested in playing around with the idea of a textbook, and so that's where that whole thing came from. So this is written over top of a textbook of general astronomy, which is written by Charles Young in the late 1800s. This was like a textbook that was used in colleges around the country. And so it's in the public domain now. So I'm using this as the backdrop for all of the art and the text of the story. And so I first had to find that textbook, and so this one popped up, and I took it apart, and I started thinking about building a story, and the art and the story kind of had to happen at the same time because of the nature of the way that it unravels over time. And there was this moment where I told my editor, I think I need something like 30 more pages. Is that a problem? And she's like, yeah, that's a problem. But we just had to make it happen, like, because this is my first time doing this. I'm totally new to the process. And we kind of had to develop it as we went. So the story was fully written, back and forth with the editor. We really got the story solid. And then it was like, okay, now how do we apply that to the book? And that meant that I had to go through each page, each correspondence between them, and figure out how it's going to fit on the page and lay it all out. And, there's lots of moments in the book where the girls are playing on things that are already existing on the page.
Mhm.
So, like if there's an astronomy diagram or something like that, they'll write on it or make a joke out of it. And so, in some ways, there was like this existing framework of a book that I could apply the story to, which was a really nice engine to kind of work behind. So yeah, I mean, the book designer and I had no idea. We got on a call and we're like, "How are we gonna do this?" And we were like, "We don't know. We'll figure it out." And we really just figured it out. And now if I ever do it again, I'll probably be about 50 times faster than this time going around because it was just such a learning experience.
I'm sure it's so how when did you start writing this?
I think I started writing this about 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And, this is the publishing industry. It's just like things take time for good reason. Like once I saw it in its final form, I just was so thankful that book people care about what they make in the world. It's so clear to me through every single person I've interacted with in this process just cares so deeply about the details of a book. And I just think that there's so many people along the way to thank for their input on this book.
It gives me a lot of hope for um for the world and just art in general to hear that and to know that that's the case. But this is just that's amazing. And honestly, if you I mean you say 3.5, and if you had told me like, oh, I started this like 8 years ago or something, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. So
Yes. This incredible thing happens when you're writing a story, and I should say this is a mystery as well. So there's a mystery element to it. So that when you're writing that story, you want to solve it just as much as the reader reading it wants to know what's on the next page. So the writing of this was actually pretty like quick in a way. Like I mean I not really because there's so much like editing and back and forth, but like the actual desire to like put words on a page and do it just happened so naturally because I wanted to know what was going to happen too. I didn't know what was going to happen. So,
you
figuring out
didn't? You didn't have it
no,
fully plotted
no,
out? Okay.
no. And that for me, like different parts of the story would come in and I would be like, "Oh, I want to put that in. How do I work that in?" And then, back and forth with your editor many, many times, you kind of like craft the story together. I find writing to be very collaborative and there's so many good ideas and input around how do you make the stakes higher? How do you lower the stakes? There's just a pacing and a kind of energy that you have to establish. And I was new to all of that and uh, just ready to take notes on what feedback was coming my way.
Can we I'm so fascinated too by so what was your publishing journey like? Like when did you go through a traditional query process? What did that look like for you to ultimately get here today?
I have an agent, Hannah Mann, who is amazing, and I credit her with knowing how to put the work out there. I think as a some creative people are really good at representing themselves and really good at contracts and knowing how to put their work out there. And I these are parts of the process that don't interest me and I'm not particularly good at, honestly. Like it's just not really where I need to focus because I'm not so into it. And she's wonderful at that. And that's the value that I think an agent can bring is believing in your work and making sure that it gets in front of the right people. And she did that. She shopped it around to different publishing houses and editors, and we got a response. So that's how that worked. I feel really lucky that I got connected with her.
That's yeah, that's really interesting. I'm always so curious because every nobody's journey looks the exact same. And so I'm always curious as to like what happened. What was either the moment or the agent or what was it? So very, very cool. That's awesome that she helped along with that because this it's so unique that I feel like I would also be like, I don't know how to explain it to anybody. That's why I'm like, I need everyone to see it. Just
Yes. I
see
mean,
it.
and this is the other thing about an agent is you'll send them lots of ideas and they'll be like, some of these ideas aren't very good. You should not pursue them. And Hannah's very good at that. She's like, yeah, maybe not, maybe not. And then I sent her this idea and she was like, yeah, do that. Like, because I had never done anything young adult. I've been like in the baby board book
I saw
world, which is like totally different. So, yeah, sometimes you got to run with an idea that seems crazy.
I think so. I think those can be the best ideas, honestly. Do you have a favorite moment, scene, or even page now?
Oh, yes, I do. I hope I can find it for you quickly. It doesn't necessarily have to do so much with the story. It's more about the book itself. So I mentioned that um, if you go to page 258,
Okay.
I mentioned that I got this original textbook, and I had to get it from an antique bookshop. And you'll see on page 258 at the bottom where it says Kepler's laws, right? In the center of the page there, you see kind of an imprint of a plant.
Okay,
I
yeah.
actually found a four-leaf clover on this page, and it's Kepler's page. And I was like, so I have the four-leaf clover still. But things like that just kept happening with the actual textbook. Like, there's a picture of a telescope on the first page. I don't think it's in this version, but um, there's a picture of a telescope that's illustrated in the actual textbook, and it's the telescope that my husband and I wrote our wedding vows at, like in California. So it's very funny, like little secrets to my life are in the book. So that's not so much about the story, but it's definitely some of my favorite parts of the journey of making this book, you know?
Absolutely. That, I mean, means so much. That's amazing. Very, very, very cool. Like, you'll never forget that. I mean, obviously the entire experience, but that is really, really cool how just how truly special it is. So awesome. Um, what, how do you hope readers feel after they've read this, engaged with it? Like, reading doesn't feel like a strong enough word for this one, but truly engaged with it from a visual perspective and everything that's included. How do you hope they feel?
I hope that they feel inspired to connect with people that are not like themselves and to find unique ways to connect with those people. And I think art and writing and sharing secrets, you know, being creative with somebody, just you get to know them in a different way. So Copernicus and Kepler never get to really interact in the physical world with one another, but they have this really unique friendship that allows them the space to give each other to learn who they are and what they believe in and what they value. And I would think that if people started to give that level of attention to people's stories, we may be in a position where we don't feel so at odds. So, for example, sometimes I have a hard time listening to people who don't share my political beliefs. And a lot of the time, those people that I don't necessarily agree with are from where I grew up. And I still love them. I still want them to be in my life. And when I hear from them about why they feel a certain way about something in the world, it gives me pause and it makes me think, you know, they're not wrong. They are coming at this from like where they are, you know, and I hope that people maybe take that away from it. And maybe on a more specific level, I think Appalachia, rural Appalachia, is often seen as a place that's, you know, not so relevant or overly violent or lazy, the people. And these are stereotypes that just aren't true. And I think that if we, I hope that readers maybe think differently about that place in the world if they haven't ever been to rural Appalachia or West Virginia or these parts of the world. Maybe they'll think a little differently about it.
Yeah, it's definitely an area that I feel like, to your point, comes with a lot of stereotypes and people automatically have some sort of assumptions about it, which I guess we could argue people do that for, I mean, there's a lot about Florida too, but
I
not
bet.
quite
Yeah.
not quite the same as Appalachia, but um I've always at the same time like heard about the beauty of that. I'm definitely a big outdoor person, like to spend a lot of time outside. So for me, I've always been, my husband and I have talked about, well, we'd really like to get to West Virginia just to like experience everything there, spend some time outside. It's certainly an area that I've wanted to go to. And but then you do. I mean, if I say that to some people, a lot of people have like an immediate reaction to saying, "Oh, well, I want to visit there." Some of it isn't always because of the people, but more so the lore that is
Yes.
that area.
Yeah.
But would really like to visit.
And also, Appalachia is a region in the United States that's vast. And there are many different cultures and many different people. I mean, I forget the states that we are talking about here, but maybe like Georgia to New York or something. Like, it's the Appalachian Mountain Range. West Virginia is the only state that fits completely within Appalachia, but I think that there are so many different versions of the story of what people's lives are like in these parts of the world, and they are all valid. And somebody growing up, I grew up in southwestern Virginia. Um, my experience there is going to be totally unique than someone in Tennessee or someone in North Carolina. And um, I certainly don't own the story of Appalachia, and I don't think anybody else does. And the more that we can paint the picture that it's a diverse, interesting, culturally, uh, you know, complex place, I think the better.
Yeah, I personally, I mean, I loved like reading about it and learning about it because it's so West Virginia specifically, like I haven't spent a lot of time there. I've only been to Virginia when I've been going to DC. So,
It's
it
okay,
just
that's quite common.
yeah, so, but I just love being able to experience different places, and then it just intrigues me more to want to be able to go and see it in person. I mean, even with this show, when it first started, and I feel bad that we've actually kind of don't do this quite as much as we used to, but we used to connect with a lot of different libraries around the country, and especially a lot that were in more rural areas. Not because we have a lot to do, but just to like give them a shout and give them support to our listeners. And I do remember my husband and I were driving through Tennessee at one point, and we went through like an itty bitty rural town. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's that library." And he's like, "What are you? How do you know about this?" And I was like, all because of the podcast. And he was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like this little library in the middle of Tennessee that anyone else would probably not think 2 seconds about. They would just drive past it." But there's a lot more happening in every corner of the country and the world. And so that's awesome. Do you see yourself sort of experimenting with like the mixed media and the different formatting for another book in the future?
Yes, absolutely. I'm kinda hooked on this. I don't know if I can do anything else now. That's not true. But I think that this format of I mean, I still love the idea of correspondence and writing and, young voices coming through, in multimedia in a book form. I'm just like, I think there's a lot more to explore there for me, so yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait for that. Do you have any plans in particular for the release of The Secret Astronomers?
We are having a wonderful release party at a bookstore in Brooklyn called Lofty Pigeon Books. It's in Kensington, Brooklyn. This is on November 6th. And we're just gonna celebrate the book. My colleague Lauren Redness is going to be interviewing me, and I'm so excited. So that's the plan immediately. And then I don't know. What's going to happen? Like, I guess I just have to sit back and see what people think and be ready for everything.
Be ready for everything, but also, I mean, just enjoy it. And because it's an incredible milestone that, so many people aspire to also, which, so on that note, as a debut author now and reaching this moment, what would you say to other aspiring writers or just artists, illustrators in general?
I always tell my students, I teach at Parsons School of Design, and I teach students that sometimes don't have a lot of creative confidence in their work. And I identify with that. When I was their age, going to college, I was very um, nervous about showing people my work, and I just didn't really feel confident about it. And I always tell them this story about the first English paper I got back when I was at the University of Virginia, and at the top of it, it just said, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" That was my foray into creative writing.
Oh, that's
So
goodness.
I always tell people like, maybe, hey, professors out there of the world, maybe don't do that to young writers, but be prepared for, feedback. And so my message would be like, try to find something unique that feels comfortable for you. For me, writing through dialogue and having a lot of visual art has been something that gives me confidence to write and make a story, because those things just come really naturally to me. But maybe you're a person that likes to tell stories through, first person historical contexts or something, and that feels really comfortable. I think it's just a matter of finding that unique place that feels like you can get a story out. And we're all different. I told my agent when we were starting to pitch this idea, like, "Hannah, what happens if I can't do this? What if I can't write this story?" And she's like, "You will, because you're just gonna have to find a process that works for you, and you'll find it. And she was right. So that's my advice, I guess.
I think, well, I need it. I think a lot of other people need it. And it's hard, especially the creative space in general. There's something about putting your work out there, no matter what it looks like, is vulnerable and you're gonna get something, but finding out what your process is and building that confidence. And part of it too is just like is taking that leap to put yourself out there.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's like that hardest initial step is that first time doing that, but I I think that's something we can all learn from and hopefully do too in our own way, whatever that looks like. For anyone, readers, illustrators, all of the above that would like to connect with you, where can they do so?
So I'm on Instagram at Hello Jessica Walker, and my website is hellojessicawalker.com. And yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone who's interested in some of these wonderful creative ideas.
We will definitely link those in the podcast notes too and on social media so that everyone can connect with you. The Secret Astronomer will be available November 4th. Jessica, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, for sharing your creative work with me, with readers soon. I'm so excited for it to be out in the world and to hear what people have to say too. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a joy talking with you.
Likewise. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening. The Narratives and Nightcaps podcast is a production of the Craft Co. with intro music created by Remington Haynes.
Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow at Narratives and Nightcaps on Instagram or visit our website, narrativesandnightcaps.com.
Sign up for our newsletter to always know what we're reading next, which authors are joining us on the show, and for extra bookish and beverage info.
Connect with our additional co-hosts, Jordan and Emily, as well.
You can find me on Instagram at Cozy Reads and Sips.
And you can find me on Instagram at books.bottles.
Cheers!
Cheers!